Yo, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all the other episodes, stop by raprankings.com or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform.
All right, welcome back, guys, and we are here with our special guest. You may remember this guest as he was the first ever interview we did on Patreon on our show Conversations, but even though we did cover some rap stuff with him, it wasn't specifically, it wasn't a hip-hop show. It was more of just a long sort of form interview. But I'm happy to bring to the show, he is a producer, among many other things, father, and just all around, just a dope dude. And Mel, are those Conversations episodes still up?
Yeah, and they're still up.
Yeah, if you guys check out our Conversations on Melvin's YouTube page, you could hear more about him. But Kill, welcome back to the show.
Nah, man, thank you all for having me, man. It's a blessing, man.
Times are crazy. And when you last joined us, we were able to go outside. Everything was cool.
Right.
And now things are in a bit of a tailspin, but I'm very happy to be joined by Kill once again here on Rap Rankings. And Kill, welcome to the show.
Now, again, man, I appreciate the shout out. I appreciate the love, the invitation, everything.
Well, let's get to it because Kill is here to discuss The Evils with us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, what track number is this? Track 6?
It's track 6. Yep, track 6, The Evils, produced by DJ Premier.
Yeah.
Yep. Look, it's great to have you back. Feel like it's been too long. That was a great conversation we had on Conversations last year.
Right.
You're our first official guest of season 2. You know, you were also our first guest on Conversations. So
hey, I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Nice full circle we got going on here. But usually when we bring on guests, we just do some quick housekeeping. So get you acquainted with the rating system and everything.
All right.
So basically, it's really simple. It's a 1 to 10 scale. Each number means something. It corresponds to a definition. In short, basically, a 10 means this is a perfect song to you, one of your favorite songs of all time.
Okay.
9 means you love it. 8 means you like it a lot. 7 means you like it. 6 means it's aight. You don't dislike it, but you can't say that you like it. Right. 5 means you feel practically nothing about it. 4 means it's not the worst thing you've ever heard, but you dislike it. 3 means you dislike it. 2 means you hate it. And 1 means you absolutely can't stand it. One of the worst things you've ever heard.
All right,
that's pretty much it.
All right.
Yeah. So, usually we like to, give the guest the floor. If you want to go first or, however you want to do it, we lead off with the ratings and then we get into the discussion. So,
all right. For me, this is 10.
Word.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wait, hold up. Mel, we got something new now.
Oh, yeah, right, for season 2. So, yeah, it's a 10. That means you like it. There's the yay buzzer. We got yay and nay buzzers going on here.
All right.
So, we got a yay from Kill here. I'll go ahead and, Moulz, do you want to go?
Or whatever you prefer. I'll go, you go, we all go.
I like going last. You go second.
All right, well, listen, The Evils, I'll give this one a 9.
Okay. Nice. All right. Well, I always feel like I get put in the whippersnapper position. I do like it. And maybe this is one of those things as I get more familiar with it, as I grow and listen more and more, I like it more. But for me, I like it. It's a flat 7. So,
hey, it's still, listen, that counts still.
Yeah. So this
let's
record, let's talk about it. So, I'll lead off like this. All of you people with conspiracy YouTube channels, I think now it's your time as we discuss this record, as rumors have been swirling about Jay-Z's relation to, shadowy groups, that's been going on for years. But this song is a pretty important record in his catalog, I would say, in terms of not only what he's speaking about, as a subject, but it contextualizes the rest of his career as it continues to grow and develop and how people view Jay-Z. Right now, the modern viewpoint is like, oh, he's this, evil capitalist, and he's this and he's that, and he's, there are a lot of different things you can point to, but this is a very self-aware record. And, I think it speaks to his awareness of how the chase for success can change a person. So, we can talk about the music first, the beat, DJ Premier. We can talk about the content. We can skip all around, wherever you guys want to start,
Well, I think the music is an interesting place to start because it frames everything, right?
Right.
So we got the samples on the hook. It's Prodigy and Snoop Dogg.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, when you think about, Prodigy especially, oh my God, he has albums dedicated to this kind of content.
Right.
He would go on to make stuff like HNIC Part 2, which is basically a conspiracy theorist album.
Mm-hmm.
But, even going back to, this is on the LL Cool J I Shot You remix, this Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body, secret society trying to keep their eye on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's plain, so you got to think about Primo taking these specific vocal samples for this record, as well as the piano, which I think, earlier on Dead Presidents, we hear piano, but it's a lot more bittersweet sounding, whereas this sounds a lot more solemn. There's a darker tinge to the sound here. So, I mean, personally, this is one of my favorite Premier beats.
Well, what's interesting as I was reading about this record. So, the Snoop and Prodigy samples that DJ Premier scratches in were actually requested by Jay-Z. Primo said Jay told him all the scratches he wanted him to cut. And he said he doesn't think Jay spins, but just the fact that he was able to come up with that hook, I guess Jay-Z has a little bit of DJ in him too. He said he just had to convert it to his style. And it's funny you mentioned it's a little more somber. Jay said, I want minor keys, almost sad,
Mm-hmm.
So this was pretty much handcrafted, or requested by Jay, and Primo did his thing. And yeah, I'll say this is unrelated, but also related. This beat kind of reminds me, this sample is this Go Back Home by Alan Toussaint, I guess, how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the Misunderstood beat from Finding Forever, just musically. It just reminds me of it. But this probably the darkest beat on the album, fittingly enough. Funny story about just this song in general before we get into the actual content. I guess Memphis Bleak almost got in trouble about this record. He said his favorite song on the album was The Evils, and he had stole a copy of the song because he liked it so much, to where Jay and B-High came to his apartment and was like, yo, I heard you giving out copies of the song. Word came back to you. And they were ready to beat him up and even drop Bleak from hanging around with them because they was like, you a thief. But Memphis Bleak was like, they didn't understand. I needed that record for my soul. I need it. You're talking to me. So that's how impactful this record is for some people. It's risking relationships, stealing it just to have it to listen to. But yeah, the content of this song, this is that Omerta talk, bro. This is blood in, blood out. It's really just committed to that lifestyle of corruption and evil, what it does to the spirit. I guess just to start from verse 1, you got the gist of it is basically just this distrust, paranoia, even around friends, because there's no honor among thieves, and Jay's basically confronting. It's well, why even subject yourself to this? But it's he says, whoever said illegal was the easy way out couldn't understand the mechanics and the workings of the underworld. Granted, 9 to 5 is how you survive. I ain't trying to survive. I'm trying to live it to the limit and love it a lot, but living that way will inevitably corrupt you. It's only natural, which he continues to get at as he continues. Life ills poison my body. I used to say, fuck my skills. I never prayed to God. I prayed to Gotti, which is interesting because I first heard that line referenced by Lupe Fiasco, being younger, I'm 27. Lupe references this line on Hurt Me Soul on Food and Liquor, you know, and at the time I didn't know what song he was referring to. But I finally heard this song for the first time years later in like 2013, you know, so hip hop, you know, there's a web, it connects, you know. And he continues
he's definitely doing a good job on this song in general of just painting a picture of the underworld, you know, and of the, you know, just like the dealings between people and, you know, really giving you almost like a documentary-esque glance at it through his lyrics.
Yeah. You know, and what's, you know, depressing
and
its
its effects on the person's soul as well, you know?
Yeah. You know, and I don't think depressing is really even the word for it. It's just, it's, you know, I mean, he basically, by the end of this first verse, he admits like he owns it. You know, he doesn't want forgiveness. He just wants more ways to navigate this life. You know, he's talking to the OGs. It's like he's already just accepted that this is the way his life is going to go, you know. And, you know, basically that continues. You know, verse 2, he delves deeper into this idea of relationships and friendships and how they start to fracture. You know, he's speaking about people he came of age with, you know, like the closest of friends when we first started, but grew apart as the money grew and soon grew black-hearted. Thinking back when we first learned to use rubbers, he never learned. So in turn, I'm kidnapping his baby mother, you know, which is just like, that's dark, man. That's dark. I can't imagine people I grew with, you know, people I'm in group chats with every day, suddenly getting to the point where like I'm kidnapping their girlfriends for intel about them. You know, it's just, but this is what that lifestyle does to you. You know, I can't relate to that personally, but Jay's gift, you know, in this song and in his career is that ability to draw you into that world and express things in such a way that you understand, even though you're not a part of that lifestyle.
You know what though, the line that comes a little bit later on the verse is the one that really hits me when he says, "All the years we were real close," or rather, "We used to stay up all night at slumber parties. Now I'm trying to rock his bitch to sleep." Mm-hmm. You know, just that juxtaposition of time.
Right. Yeah, and also slumber parties and then, you know, rocking
exactly
his bitch to
slumber
sleep,
parties and then rocking
play.
his bitch to sleep. Exactly. So just the parallels in the lyrics. I mean, as far as mafioso Jay goes, I don't think it really gets much better than this. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's just like you said, who could ever foresee? You know, it's by the end of the song, the transformation's complete. I mean, he leads off with, "My flesh no nigga could test. My soul is possessed by the evils in the form of diamonds and Lexuses." The whole final verse, man, is just him not even doubling that, tripling down on it. Like, it's just, he's completely committed to this lifestyle. And, you know, I think the heart and soul of the record though is that reservation, but you can't have reservations in this lifestyle. Of course it's eating at him. You know, he's crying out in the whole record, but you can't stop. It's just, you go deeper and deeper and deeper into this pit. You don't really have a choice, because if you got the evils in you, everyone around you most likely does too. You can't really show any sympathy or any reservation in a life like this. So, you know, that's this record. Like I said, for me, it's a flat 7. I like it. You know, I can't relate to it. And it's not because I think I'm a better person or anything, but it's just, I don't live that lifestyle, but I can understand the idea of corruption, and the more you get exposed to, the more you learn that that's sort of being a curse. It's like you can't turn back after a certain point,
right?
You know, you can only fall into it deeper. But yeah, I mean, I like to pass the floor, you know, to Kill. I just wondering, because you selected this song specifically to come on for, so I was interested to know, you know, what exactly led to that decision.
I mean, for me, it's so many. This album came out in '96. What is this? What is this? 25 years ago. Like, to this day, every day or every week, my favorite song can change. So if we did this show next month, it could have been Dead Presidents. You know what I mean? Ask me in 2 months, could have been Can't Knock the Hustle. You know, my first reaction was Politics as Usual. So it's crazy that an album 25 years later can, you know, still have me changing what my favorite song is. But just the time you hit me, it was the Evils. You know, like you said, when we're starting, we always got to keep in mind the context of 1996. You know, Pac is still alive, Big is still alive. You know, Jay is a relatively nobody trying to come into this game, so he knew he had to put his best foot forward. You know, he was a nobody who was getting cats like DJ Premier and Ski and Clark Kent, you know, and these big name producers, and paying them in shoebox money. You know, paying them with straight, just handing over shoeboxes full of money to pay them for this stuff. So, you know, this is Jay at his best to me. This is Jay, the Jay that I personally love. I don't love the pop crystal Jay. I don't love the club Jay. I love the drug dealing Jay, because to me that's Jay at his best. You know, it's almost like with ball. Ray Allen is known for his 3-pointers. Doesn't mean he don't handle, he doesn't dunk, but when you think Ray Allen, his thing is 3-pointers. When I think Jay-Z, yeah, he could do club jams and he could do this and he could do that. But to me, Jay at his best is when he's talking about the streets, because it's obvious he lived it. Now, to what extent, I don't know if Jay really, what he's saying, streets is watching, you know, they had to send the National Guards to come get me. I don't know if it was that bad, you know, but you could tell that this dude was just not the average dude just selling some nicks on the corner or whatever like that. Like, he's into this game, and the Evils was just it. Like you said, if you start off with just the beat, like in 1996, DJ Premier is, you know, if not the dopest producer in hip hop, at least top 3. Somebody else may say RZA, somebody else may say Pete during that time. I personally go with Primo. So you just, I mean, the drums, the beat, just everything about it. And during this time, I used to host Strictly Hip Hop up at Morgan, and we had a segment that my OG, a kid called Roots, who went on to produce for Roc-A-Fella and did some songs for Memphis Bleak. Do My Ladies Run This. It was a joint with Bleak and Jay. Way back in 92, he had a segment of the show called Milk Crates, where he would play the original record and then play the song that sampled it. And for years, nobody could find this sample. So if this came out in 96, I don't know if people found what this sample was until maybe in the early mid 2000s that people found out that it was this Alan Toussaint sample. You got to remember, in 96, we didn't have the internet yet.
Right. There wasn't like who sampled or
you can't just go to who sampled. And
I remember when this sample got revealed, there was a huge, it was like in the middle of the 2000s. It was online. It was a big deal. Because people have been looking for this record forever. Right.
Diggers have been looking for this record forever. And that's another reason why, you know, me being a producer, that's another reason why Premier ranks so high, because Premier is one of the few producers who you can't find the record, or even if you hear the record, I can play you what Premier used, but he may have chopped it up so much or just took literally 2 seconds from it and you can't hear it. You know, no disrespect to Troy, but if I play you the sample to Troy, you gonna know it the second as soon as the needle hits the record, you're gonna be like, oh, that's Pete and CL's Troy. You can't do that with a lot of Premier stuff. You know, I'll play stuff for somebody and they'll be like, I don't hear it. Let me play it again. I still don't hear it. I've had to literally sit here.
Happened with Nas's Like, didn't it? With that,
Nas is Like, same thing. It took people forever to find out what that record was. You know what I mean? So Premier is just notorious for that. So I mean, the beat is crazy, like you said. The scratches, you know, just perfect. You know, this whole Snoop Dogg, dear God, I wonder, can you save me? Like, Murder was the case. Like, again, with the Prodigy thing, that was just crazy. And then, like you said, it was just the rhymes. Like, in 96, people got to understand that we saw many faces of Jay-Z. You know, we saw the Hawaiian Sophie Jay-Z with Jazz back in 90, you know, and it was like, yo, who's this corny boy out here? You know, whatever, you know, he looked corny or whatever. You know what I mean? And then we saw Jay a couple of years later with Original Flavor, with Can I Get Open? And he was, you know, riggedy rapping all fast and doing the diggity das thing. You know what I mean? I was like, nah, I ain't feeling dude. And then my OG, a kid called Roots, came to the studio one day and played us In My Lifetime. He was like, yo, this is the new Jay-Z. And I'm like, that iggity nigga? Nah, man, I don't want to hear that shit. And he was like, nah, man, like, you got to hear this. Like, he ain't doing that iggity shit no more. And it was like, word? He put on In My Lifetime. I was like, oh, shit, this nigga is nice. Like, you know, I'm like, yo, how did you become a drug dealer and you was just doing DOS effects the other day? But, you know, so we saw many people who were there at the time. We saw different faces of who Jay was. And it was like, yo, this is dope. You know, so when the Evils came out in 96, a lot of people weren't rhyming like this. You know what I mean? Like, like you just said, like, I don't know, what's a good word? You know, 9 to 5 is how you survive. I ain't trying to survive. I'm trying to live it to the limit and love it a lot. You know what I mean? Like, just things like that was just making people go like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like, I ain't trying to survive. Like, and he's telling you that. So it's like the life I live it because I'm not trying to survive. You know, it's almost like in a Bronx Tale with Sonny when it's like, yo, the worker man's a sucker. That's what Jay is saying. Like, I'm not trying to be no sucker. I'm not trying to be no bus driver. I'm not trying to be no boy who drives, you know, a train or does whatever for 9 to 5, because that's just surviving. I don't want to survive. I want to live it to the limit and love it a lot. You know what I mean? And it was just like, yo, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Or people, when he said whoever said illegal was the easy way out, they couldn't understand the mechanics. I know people who be like, oh man, selling drugs is easy. Bruh, you really don't, you think that this is easy? Like, and like he said, you can't understand the mechanics of the underworld if you know that. I mean, to the point that, you know, the line about I never prayed to God, I prayed to God-E. Like, that right there is crazy, because when you're coming up in the hood, I'm from Philly, you know, so when you coming up in the hood, I don't know if a week goes by when you don't question, is there a God? You know, because if there was a guy with such and such got killed last night, if there was a guy with Shorty got raped last week, you know, Jay said it later on, you know, and where I'm from, he said something to the extent of, you know, like, you know, where we question God, you know what I mean? Like, you know, we say the church is the flakiest, and niggas been praying to God so long that we atheists. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
like, even on this very same album, not to interrupt you, but like, I think it's Politics as Usual, where he has a line, he's like cursing the very God that brought this, what did he say?
That brought this, like, the street, the keys, about the island. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, yeah, I mean, that's deep what you just said, you know, just the idea that, yeah, living in that environment, like what that forces you to look at the world as and makes you question things. You know, the line was cursing the very God that brought this grief to be. You know, like that's deep, man. Like, but yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's one of the things, like, you know, if you grow up in the suburbs, 2-parent house, everything is love, you know, it's like, yeah, God is good. God is great. That's dope. But when you grow up in the hood and you don't know who your father is and your mom's on drugs and everybody around you is doing dirt, you gonna be an atheist, you know, when you praying to God, like, God changed my life, and you don't see anything change. And like you said, you've been praying to God so long that we atheists now. We don't even believe in God. You know what I mean? So when he says, I never prayed to God, I prayed to God-E, like, that's a huge line. Like, yo, I believe in John Gotti more than I believe in God. Like, think about that. Like, yo, like, I believe in a gangster before I'll pray to a gangster before I pray to a God for what I've been through. You know what I mean? So, like, stuff like that. But, you know, and you know, it's just all those little pieces in there. And I mean, I don't know if you want me going through the whole song, you want me to come back to verse 2, or how.
Oh, however you want to do it.
I'll fall back. I'll come back to verse 2. I want everybody to jump in.
Yeah, word.
Well, I think in this verse specifically, but throughout this album in general, Jay's flow on here, like you said, like, if you go back and you trace rap from the beginning and to get to this point, Jay has a certain conversational flow that feels new for this time period. Now, I wasn't listening to Jay in 96, but the only person I can think of that's like dropping certain words into the next bar, basically. You know what I'm saying, Mel? Like,
yeah,
how just like going back to that verse, like, you know, whoever said illegal was the easy way out couldn't understand the mechanics and the workings of the underworld. Granted, like that. Granted, right?
Yeah.
Very conversational in nature. And delivery. Feels like he's talking to you, but what he's saying is so ill, man. Like, it's poetic. So you have that balance, and also in the lyrics, you know, you get a lot of it's not portrayed glamorously. So it's got that sort of, you know, people have always talked about Goodfellas as a movie, for example, that like, you know, it's a movie that lacks morality, but I think it is the opposite. I think it's a morality play when you think about the fact
that's a document. That movie's a document of the rise and fall.
And fall, you know, and once you start getting into the cocaine and the craziness and you're in the third act of that movie,
the evils took over.
The evils took over. You start to see the downfall. And I just, the thing that separates Jay from a lot of other rappers at the time, especially, is to me the conversational nature in which he's presenting a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And just in general, the poetics of it, basically. Because,
well, you know, what you were saying, like you were like how lines bleed into like the next bar. Like earlier in the album, it's like, you feel my triumph, never feel my pain, I'm lying. Low in the leathers, I am. Like the way, the flow, like you were saying, like it's conversational and you hang on each word and it like, you know, melts into the next. I mean, of course, I wasn't around. Well, I was around. I was like 3 years old, but I wasn't listening to Jay-Z back in '96 either. In fact, like as I was saying earlier, I didn't hear this album the first time until 2013. And even at that, I don't think this album, well, I know it didn't really hit me until a couple of years ago in 2018, where I ran through his entire discography. And this was the first time this album had really hit me. And I was like, you know what? I'm hearing why this was a classic and why this is considered to be a classic. Because in 2013, I don't know if I was ready yet. I was still kind of like, you know me, Moulz, I was listening to Charles Hamilton a lot. Well,
it was that like, I don't know if I can relate to this attitude.
Right. Like I liked certain songs, but like it hadn't connected with me as an album and as a total work, you know, and I was still growing myself as just a student of hip hop and as a rapper myself. And the more I learned, I was able to come back and appreciate this album more, you know, because, like, you know, I'm always honest with myself. When I hear that something is revered or like part of the hip hop canon or like a classic, you know, I go in and that's in the back of my mind, but I do my best to listen as if, you know, there's nothing attached to it.
Right.
You know,
there's no expectations for you to like it or something like that.
Right. So, you know, when I first went into it, I was like, okay, like this might not be a classic for me, but I see I can connect to certain songs. And as the years passed, as my worldview grew, as my, you know, sort of as I graduated from like hip hop 101 to 102 and like, you know, so on and so forth, I was able to hear different things and appreciate more about the album, to where now I'm at the point where I consider this album to be a classic myself, you know, and I had to I can say I came to that conclusion myself. It wasn't really influenced by the talk about it being a classic, because I didn't think it was a classic at first for many years. You know, I kept revisiting it throughout the years. And then in 2018, it hit me in a different way. It took 5 years for me to really reach that point, you know, but I want to say something too that was to what Kill was saying earlier about him being, you know, pretty much an unknown in '96, you know, and just, you know, paying for all this with shoebox money and just like having to prove himself. You know, there's something interesting about this song specifically in relation to DJ Premier and that whole topic. I guess DJ Premier said Jay-Z was the first artist that he had asked to tighten up some lines. And Jay was, I guess, against it. He said he was totally against it. And Premier said they kind of had a push and pull with each other over that, because he felt that as a producer, you've got to speak your mind to get the best possible take from an artist when you record them. So like, you know, and it's like, just that's crazy to think about, like knowing who Jay-Z is now, like asking him to like, no, go in and recut that. But in '96, you know, it's like, you can tell him that, because like, who is this Jay-Z kid? Like earlier in the album, Dead Presidents, like when they were trying to get like the big verse clear, like they had called Puff or something. Puff was like, who is this Jay-Z? You know, which is like wild now, because we know who Jay-Z is. He's this billionaire. He's this legend. He's an arguable GOAT for people. But back then, it's like DJ Premier could tell you, nah, go in and recut that, you know, tighten it up, you know. But that's just how unknown he was at the time.
You know what's interesting, Mel, off of that, I was thinking about this specifically with this song, is that when I heard this album for the first time, you know, I came into Jay a little late. I didn't hear him until Volume 2. Mm-hmm. and you know, I didn't really even become like a J. I would say like a J. I don't know what you would call a J stan, but you know, as big of a J fan as one could be in New York, like, you know, 2000 ish Dynasty era is when like I really got into J. And I never heard Reasonable Doubt until after the Blueprint came out.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like I heard Volume 2 and then was like, all right, I got to hear Volume 1 and Reasonable Doubt now. I came around to this one later. So when I'm hearing a song like this, the Prodigy verse and the Snoop joint, these are already established classics. I'm being told this is like part of the canon already.
Mm-hmm.
Reasonable Doubt's a classic. I Shot Your Remix is a classic. Murder Was the Case is a classic. Like, you know, I'm going into like all of that is in stone already when I'm hearing this. But I wanted to ask Kill, how do you feel about what, you know, or how did you feel being around for this album when it came out, when you hear essentially what are like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 year old verses being scratched on the chorus? Like, because to me, this is already well established stuff. But, you know, coming out, it's interesting to think about. Like, you know, Premier took a gamble, I guess, on 2 verses that ended up being, you know, mythologized, basically.
Right.
I mean, when we heard that, everybody was blown away, bro. I mean, we all was sitting there, you know, picking up on. To this day, Jay is one of the few MCs who I'll pick up on a bar or something he said 20 years ago right now. Like, it just went over your head. So, I mean, listening to this, I mean, you're talking about cats still having tape decks in their cars. You know what I mean? So you're talking about rewinding his back. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we had CD players in our crib, but everybody didn't have cars with CD players in them, you know, in 96. You know, I'm still in college. So, you know, I ain't have a car in college. So, you know what I mean? Like, so you're sitting here just rewinding it back. Like, yo, what did he say? Like, yo, did he say that? Like, yo, like, I mean, this was monumental because we hadn't heard an MC who could talk, drug talk, money talk, and do it so effortlessly. You know what I mean? Like, you got some of that in Big, but Big never really talked about really selling drugs. You know what I mean? And like really being in the street and things like that, you know. But Jay was, I mean, this was the first we had like this, you know, and who did it this well. That's the other piece. Like, somebody who did it this well, that you had this rewind factor of, yo, what did he say? Like, I remember listening to it and we would be arguing like, yo, he said, I never prayed to God. I prayed to who? Like, some people will say Gotti. Some people say he said something else. Like, so you were sitting there like trying to decipher again. We didn't have no, you know, nowadays you don't know. What did he say? What does that mean? Just go to Genius. Oh, it says right there. Like, we didn't have that. You had to figure out for yourself what something meant. You know what I mean? Right. You and what it meant to you may have been something else. It meant something else to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, nah. He don't mean that. He mean this. Or so. I mean, when this dropped, it was like, yo, this is dope. You know what I mean? And again, people who had their ear to the streets again had heard of Jay. You know, for a lot of people, this was Jay-Z's. People my age. I'm 46. People who were my age at that time, this was their first time hearing Jay-Z. They didn't know about Hawaiian Sophie's Jay-Z. They didn't know about original, because Can I Get Open wasn't a huge song, you know what I mean, when it dropped with original flavor. So for some people, this was their first time hearing of Jay-Z. Yeah, but I mean, to answer the question, I mean, we was blown away, man, by the whole entire album. And, you know, just again, you know, the second verse, we used to fight for building blocks. Now we fight for blocks with buildings that make a killing. Like, yo, what? Like, that right there in 2020 is enough to stop you in your tracks. Like, yo, did that nigga just say? So you could only imagine in 1996 what we were saying. Like, yo, this dude is fighting for building blocks. Like, you're sitting there trying to piece it together and you're visualizing it. You're like, yo, you know, you kids, you playing with building blocks now. They done graduated and they on the block fighting for buildings. Like, who's in control of this block and who's in control of that block? So, like I said, reading this stuff in 2020 will blow your mind. So you could only imagine in 1996 we would just look at, and this is just one song. This is just song 6.
This is just
so
one
by the
song,
time you
and
get to
that's-
Friend
and
of
that's one
Foe,
line,
by the time
and
you
in
get to
that
Friend
one
of Foe,
line-
your head is exploded. You can't even take no more. Like your head is really literally like, yo, I'm done.
That's called motherfucking bars, nigga.
You know what I mean? Like your head is exploded by Friend of Foe. It's almost like, yo, we gotta come play the rest tomorrow, man. Like I can't. It's almost like going to eat at a buffet. Like, yo, I can't digest no more, man. Like my brain is already on overload, trying to really, you know. And then, like he said, thinking back when we first learned to use rubbers, he never learned. So in turn, I'm kidnapping his baby's mother. Like, yo, if this nigga would have listened and used the condom, he wouldn't have no baby mother for me to kidnap.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So yeah, it's like, yo, you know, my hand around a collar, feeding the cheese. She said the taste of dollars was shitty, so I fed her 50s. About his whereabouts, I wasn't convinced. I kept feeding her money till his shit started to make sense, like dollars and cents. And now you're making, like I said, bro, and we only in the second verse of one song. So yeah, when this came out, it was, this to me is really like, I know people hold the Illmatic in the status of like the Bible of MCing. Reasonable Doubt is right there, because this is teaching you how to MC. Like if you want to go on Genius now and look up all the lyrics and all that, this is like Humanities 201 on how to MC. Because, you know, it's just so much with it. So I mean, yeah, like Jay, and again, when you're thinking about it like this, Jay is a relative nobody in this situation. You know, and it's funny because I was just talking on Twitter the other day about how people, I think it was the whole Logic thing with Logic saying Joe Budden calling him whack made him want to kill himself. And I'm like, yeah, see, that's why I don't understand this whole fucking generation, because, you know, that whole Erykah Badu, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. I'm like, look, the second you press upload on SoundCloud, or you release an album, or you upload it on Apple Music, yo, bruh, you're open for criticism. If you an artist and you sensitive about your shit, play it for your man in your car and leave it there. You see what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, look at it like this. Nobody wanted to sign Jay-Z. Think about that. Rap's first billionaire, what most people call the GOAT MC ever, no record label wanted to sign. Did this nigga Jay go commit suicide because Russell Simmons said, oh, we don't like you? Was Jay in the source talking about, oh, Uncle Russ is mean, man, I want to kill myself because he wouldn't sign me? Like, nigga, what is you fucking talking about? Joe Buns make you want to commit suicide, nigga? Fucking,
Mel, what was that video
my bad.
that I sent you? What was that video I sent you,
It was the video where he was like his retirement speech.
Yeah, like my bad. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm just saying to say that this is where Jay was. Like, oh, word, you don't want to sign me? I'll do it myself. Right. I'll do it myself. I'll make a better independent album. Because even though this was released through Priority Records, this was very much a paid for out of Jay-Z's own pocket. This is Reasonable Doubt is an independent album. There's no A&R behind the scenes, pulling all these strings, getting this producer. This is all an independent album. That's something that nobody talks about. I've never heard anybody ever talk about Reasonable Doubt as an independent album, but it truly was made as an independent album. Same thing with The Chronic. Most people don't know, before Dre and them got the deal with Death Row, The Chronic was done. It was already recorded.
Yeah, they were trying to shop it around.
Right, it was done.
To mention, Dame Dash basically had to threaten people to play some of these records on the radio.
Yeah,
he was strong-arming people. He was the bad cop.
Yeah, and we don't talk about how this is basically an independent, paid for, out of Jay-Z's pocket, A&R. So for me, a 5-mic classic album. And it just goes to show you don't need a label. I'll say this. If you got money, you don't need a label and you have talent. Because with somebody will hear, oh yeah, I don't even need a label. You need money and you need the talent. Like, let's not get that twisted. Because I always tell people, if Jay-Z works for UPS, this album doesn't get made. Same lyrics, same skill, same talent. But if you're working at UPS, trying to pay your rent, trying to get your little man some Jordans, you don't have no money to play DJ Premier. You don't have no money to pay Clark Kent. You don't. So even though you could have all the talent, you could have all these same exact bars in your head written, if you don't have the money, if you don't have the drug money, let's say that, let's keep it a buck. If you don't have the drug money to put behind it, this album never gets made. Because somebody listens like, oh man, I hear you, Kill. I could make this album myself. No, you can't. No, you can't. Not unless you got some drug money, or you got a friend who's rich and who just has money that they can just throw at you. Because again, Premier's taking the phone calls because whatever Premier's price is, Jay-Z could pay that.
Yeah. It's the same story today, really. You know, like rappers are still funneling in the game, you know, off the backs of drug money or different, you know, connects, or, you know, they got a network, they know this person who knows that person.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, funding is everything.
Right. And then it's the funding, but then too, it's also the talent. Because you could make this money, but you could be a drug dealer who can't rap. So yeah, you could pay for all the beats, but if your rhymes aren't nice enough to do what Jay did, then you just got whack rhymes over dope beats. So it's about having the money and the talent. And usually what happens is you either have one or the other. You have a lot of talented independent artists who don't have the money, or you have people who have the money but aren't very talented. So very seldomly do you get them both together in the same situation to say, I've got the money and I've got the talent to do what I got to do. So, but nobody, I've never heard anybody ever talk about Reasonable Doubt as an independent album. And it was made. That's what I'm saying. It was made as an independent album. For other people, once you get the deal, then your A&R is running around. Because back in these days, the A&R was just as important sometimes as some of the label reps. Because from doing radio for years, like, you know, like Mr. Dave was the A&R over at Payday. Payday was Group Home and J. Rue the Damages album. And I mean, everybody knew Mr. Dave. Knowing Mr. Dave was just like knowing who Premier was. Or Shucky Ducky was the A&R and the marketing dude for Duck Down Records with Smith & Wesson and Black Moon and all of them. So these people will run around and put those things together. And Jay, Dame, and Kareem did it themselves. So it was a very much independent made album, you know, which is huge too at the time. Like the album doesn't get enough props for being that.
Word.
When you can basically tell from listening to it, there aren't the usual major label concessions made. They got to put out a debut album 100% their own vision, and I think that's why this endures as one of the best debuts of all time, because really what major label is going to allow someone to have 100% creative vision on the final product?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's right. It's completely untouched by, you know, those, right, like you said, those major label concessions. Like this sounds like the album he wanted to make, you know, by all accounts and by what you hear. Like this was the vision 100%.
And here's the other thing too that people don't talk about. This dude had 3 DJ Premier beats in 1996. 3. Now keep in mind that Nas had what? 3 on Illmatic back in 94 through Columbia Records. Jay got 3 DJ Premier beats in 96, where maybe Premier is even hotter than he was in 94. And at the time when they're recording this, he's an independent artist. Same thing. Ski Beats was a very huge producer around this time. I mean, the whole Camplo, Lucchini, Bahamadia, Ski was getting busy too during that time. And he got what, 2 or 3 Ski Beats on here too? So again, it was just like, you know, because being at the radio station, they would send us records and we would, I know for me, if it was a group we never heard of, the first thing we looked at was who produced it. A great example is this group called All City. I got the 12-inch for All City's joint called The Actual. Nobody at the radio station heard All City. Who All City? I don't know, but Premier produced the A side and Pete Rock produced the B side. Oh, well, then we playing it. That's all. We ain't even hear the record. We played it live on air for the first time. That's the first time I heard the Actuals when we played it. Why? Because it said produced by DJ Premier. And if the Premier produced it, I don't care who you are. It got to be dope. It was that simple. So, but again, All City got the label money. So again, Jay, we don't talk enough about how important that is, because a lot of people can't make albums without the A&R being around, without somebody to not, I don't want to say hold their hand, but Large Professor played a very huge A&R part in making Illmatic. And what I mean by that is Large Pro could have said, you know what, I'm going to produce this whole album and called it a day, just like he did for Akinelli. Because Large Pro brought Akinelli and Nas and Joe Fado all out on Live at the Barbecue. But he didn't do that for Nas. He said, yo, let me take you out here to Brooklyn, introduce you to my man Premier. Let me take you up to Mount Vernon, get you with Pete. Let's go out to Queens and get with my man Q-Tip. So you see what I mean? Without Nas would have been happy just rhyming over 12 beats. If Large Professor said, I'm going to produce a whole album, Nas would have been like, cool, pick the beats and let's go. You see what I'm saying? Right. So Nas needed help. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's no knock on Nas. We all need help. Steph Curry is an ill shooter, but guess what? He got a shooting coach to help him. You know what I mean? So it's not a knock. I'm just showing you how Jay didn't have any of that. Jay didn't have nobody to say, okay, let me introduce you to Premier.
Right. And you know, that gives credence to all his slick talk on the album. Because like you're saying, this funding, it makes the drug talk more authentic. Because if you have this kind of money, clearly he must have done these things.
Exactly. Like I said, he's not your nickel and bag corner boy type drug dealer. Now, like I said, did the National Guards come get him? I don't know. But he did enough where you could pay a nigga $30,000 in a Nike shoebox. Right. So again, nobody really talks about that part of it, that, that they made the album totally independently, which again may not impress a lot of people nowadays because of Bandcamp and SoundCloud and everything like that. But in '96, like something like that was unheard of.
Who's making Reasonable Doubt on Bandcamp and SoundCloud though?
Oh, no, nobody. But what I'm saying is that may not be impressive to people now because people now feel like they have their own record label. You see what I'm saying? So that's why, tools. Right? That's what I'm saying. Nowadays, that's like somebody listens like, oh, what's the big deal? I made my own record, but I'm like, well, in 1996, before you had an internet, forget SoundCloud, before you even had an internet,
or Bandcamp, or
you didn't have any of that. Keep in mind, you still had a long distance phone bill. If I need to call somebody in Philly and I'm in New York, I'm paying $2 a minute. You know what I mean? Word. So this is a different day and time of what people got to understand. So you got to take yourself out of right now and transport yourself back into 1996, where again making an album like this by yourself is unheard of because you just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Just to like hearing the Jay here, like to kind of go back, I'm 27 and my introduction to Jay was late 90s, early 2000s. If I was hearing Jay, it was either on the radio or in my dad's truck. And, the album I remember really coming into consciousness about Jay with was The Blueprint. I remember seeing The Blueprint around my dad's truck, like Can I Get It was on the radio, things like that. And then the Black Album, that was my personal favorite.
Hold up. Can I Get It was 98. Blueprint's 01.
Well, no, I know I'm saying, but I remember hearing Can I Get It on the radio and things. Like I said, the radio or my dad, like that was.
So like probably Consciousness Volume 2-ish.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's when the consciousness of Jay-Z started. But, like getting in deeper into Jay-Z, through the Blueprint, and then the Black Album, was another album that my dad would play a lot. And, like I remember really gravitating towards Threats, like really breaking that down line for line. And this is before I was a rapper, but I was like, man, this is really impressive to me how he's rapping on here. And, that was my favorite Jay album for a long time. But, like I keep saying, that was my introduction to Jay. So it was like you were saying, Kill, earlier, like you prefer drug dealing Jay. He would talk about these things later on in his career, but this is the genesis of that and like the purest form of that. I got flashy Jay. I like end of like first stint, like I'm retiring Jay, which we would find out was a lie. But like that was the guy I know. He was already dating Beyonce. He was on the, he was glitz and glamour, like all of that. That was the shiny suit Jay. That was the guy who I knew. And then I had to go back, as I got older and hear this Jay. And I'm like, that just further solidified why he's looked at as the GOAT. Because I already liked him as, flashy Jay. But as I'm hearing this more, technical, as a more technical rapper and, storytelling and, I'm like, okay, this is a whole different dimension that I was not exposed to. Like, this guy really might be the GOAT. Like, I get it. I already liked him immensely, but now I'm hearing this side of him. And it's albums like this and songs like this that broaden my understanding of him as an artist and as a person, because a lot of his story is expressed through this art. Art imitates life, or life imitates, however that phrase goes. It's very much the case in the Jay-Z discography. But this song is just like, you get songs, but you don't get it as close to when he was actually living it. This is 96. This is the first album. He's funding this. So these stories are probably more fresh in his mind, and he can talk with a certain amount of authority and authenticity that, we kind of fades a bit as he gets further away from that life. So, it cuts a little deeper on songs like this and albums like this. And I just want to say,
he starts making concessions after this album. I would say increasingly until it reaches a boiling point at a certain point, and it's like he becomes all concession.
Yeah, corporate J. As we go through this season, we will reach the transition from Jay-Z to corporate J. But just something I wanted to touch on that was, Killer brought up that was interesting. Like right now, the modern day rappers, you got like the Logic versus Joe Budden thing, and it's like, a lot of rappers who came up in the internet era, the blog era, that's how they got their footing. They are subjected to message boards and form tweets and comments, and they're a little more sensitive to these things because they're getting bombarded with commentary on a level, maybe perhaps, rappers back in the day, it's either your homeboys or the streets or like, reviews and like the Source or Vibe. Like that's the extent of the feedback. It's pretty much that. Now anybody anywhere can talk to you about what you're putting out. But to what Kill was saying, this is something I understood early on as I started rapping. I started putting out music on the internet in 2009. So I had an understanding that, my sensitivity to criticism, I didn't want to be that sensitive because I knew if I had the audacity to put something out on the internet, I have this tool that they didn't have back in 96. It's a privilege, but I'm subjecting myself to criticism and I have to accept that. I can't to the degree where I would crave somebody to tell me I'm whack. And this isn't like a flex, but I went years before somebody, and I wasn't comfortable with that. It's like, I know I'm not as good as I think I am. Like I need somebody to tell me I'm whack because I know like my circle's too small. Like I wanted that because I knew I was going to grow from that. And, it's a guy like Logic where it's like, it's interesting that he got that criticism from Joe Budden, who's kind of known as an emo rapper and has had, dealings with the depression and being in those dark places. And you might think, well, Joe should have a level of empathy. Why is he talking like this? But, Joe comes from a different era. He had said recently, like, nobody was checking on me when I was writing suicidal raps, and that's kind of a bad thing. Times have changed. People are more understanding. But to his point, it's, this understanding that Logic should, and I'm sure he does know this. It's not that he doesn't know this, but when you put something out, you're subjecting yourself to things. You got to have that understanding. It's like, if you're going to put it out there, people are going to have something to say about it. That's the whole reason you're putting it out. You're going to have positive feedback. You're going to have negative feedback.
Especially in hip hop, there is a competitive aspect and a spirit of competition throughout.
And you got to prove yourself. You got to pay your dues. So that's the era that Joe Budden comes from. And, he's applying that same set of standards to Logic.
But even that era, though, like, you got to go back, as Kill was saying, to 96. Joe Budden, Logic, they have one thing that Jay doesn't. And that was the ability to plug in a mic at home and record from the comfort of their own home. Whereas in 96, home studios weren't really a thing, like, because you don't have the plug and play aspect that we have now with computers and being able to keep up with, Pro Tools on these, that was more of like a 2000s thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, to Joe Budden's point, that's part of the reason why I guess the older rappers are more critical, because you only got studio time if you were a certain level of nice. Like, people only gave you the time of day, connected you with people, got you production, got you in the studio.
Right, if
you had to prove
label.
Yourself. Right. To even get like a meeting with the label, to get signed to a label, you had to be nice. You had to be dope. Now you can buy a mic off Amazon and you got the homeboy with the home studio. So in a way, it's kind of like it's kind of balanced there in that regard, that you have to accept more criticism because you're able to put things out into the world. There's the lower barrier of entry.
But but what the other piece is too, that I think a lot of people, a lot of younger folk don't understand, is that, and my man Shadi Lukman, who taught me how to make beats, he had 3 brothers and they all rhyme. And he said, yo, back in the 80s, they lived in Brooklyn. He said you had to be the nicest MC in your house before you could even step outside on your block and call yourself an MC. Then you had to be the nicest MC on your block before you could step off your block and go to your hood and say, I'm the nicest MC. So let's say they live in Bed-Stuy. You got to be a nice MC in your house, then be on the block, than be in Bed-Stuy. Now, by the time you get there, you've already been criticized. Your brother has called you whack. Somebody on the corner called you whack. And then what you did was you went back in the house and you either quit or you sharpened your sword. You got nicer. And then when you were nice enough to say, yo, I'm an MC in Bed-Stuy, then you could go to Red Hook. Then you could go to Marcy. Then you could go to Fort Greene. Then when you made a name for yourself and you said, yo, that's how rappers used to bubble. That's how Kane, who's a Brooklyn MC, went to Marley, who was in Queensbridge, because Kane had already made his name in Brooklyn. So what happens now is that there's no way you make your name, just like you said, by buying a microphone and making a song.
Right.
And that's why that's why this generation can't take the criticism, because they never heard it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no plan for you. See, it's the same thing what happens where a lot of people get stuck in their job. Why? Because they don't understand. You get a job and you're starting on this entry level position. And unless you're forward thinking enough to say, okay, well, I need to be moving up the corporate ladder. Some people get a job and they're just happy with the job. You know why? Because there's no ladder set out for them. See, with school, we know you're in first grade. What happens when you graduate first grade? You go to second grade, then third grade, then fourth grade. What happens if you just went to fourth grade and you said, you know what? I like this shit right here. I'm not leaving. This shit is cool. Like, I'm good. I can do the math. I get all A's. I'm good right here in fourth grade. That's what happens at jobs. We're like, oh, this is cool. I know I can leave early. I can come in late. I can do this. Okay, I'm good right here. But then you look up 20 years and you haven't moved anywhere. So now with MCs, there's no first grade, second grade, third grade. There's no promotion. So Kane talks about how he would try to go to block parties and get on the mic, and the DJ wouldn't give him the mic. So Kane had to go out and buy his own mic because nobody would give him the mic. See, that doesn't happen with this generation. Everything is given to you all. You know what I mean? So there's no place to earn it. So then when you finally do get somebody say, yo, here's the thing. If somebody calling you whack makes you want to commit suicide, bro, that says so much more about you than it does about the person who called you whack. And I'm going to just keep it a buck. When I started making beats, my OGs would be like, yo, man, your drums are whack. And I'd get mad, like, what's wrong? Well, man, your snares ain't tight. It ain't no swing to it. Made me go in the crib. Okay, let me sit back and listen to Gang Starr all day. Let me see what Primo's doing. Okay, let me try to emulate that. And that's how you got better. Ain't nobody fucking thinking about killing themselves because somebody called you fucking whack. The fuck is wrong with this generation?
Well, it's interesting because here's the thing, like full disclosure, like I talk about this, I've dealt with depression. I've dealt with things like this, but I've always had a different mindset. The similar mindset to you and Joe Budden and probably Jay-Z. It's that, and Moulz can attest to this, like in our working relationship, working on music together, I've always been open for criticism. Our whole working relationship was based. I told
you this shit absolutely sucks. Right.
You've just like been blunt, like, yo, this is trash. This is terrible. And I've never been like, you a hater or like, nah, you tripping. I listen. I go back to the drawing board. I see what I can do about it. And, and what's like funny story, when I first started rapping, I like, this is 2007. I downloaded a pirated version of FL Studio and I wanted to make beats too, or at least mess around with it. And like, I kid you not, true story. Like I made like my first beat and my mom came home from work and I played it for her and she listened to it and she was like, and this is around the time Making the Band, like when Diddy was out.
Right.
And she was like, she listened, was like, you gonna be getting cheesecake for Diddy. Like you ain't going nowhere with this. She told me that. And like, I could have been like, wow, like my own mama told me this. I'ma just like, I quit. But no, I was like, huh? And you expect too, like playing something for your mom for kind of like coddle you a bit and sugarcoat. Right. It's like, oh, that's nice. But she told me the truth. And I appreciate that, because I'm a person who craves the truth. So I'm like, huh, I'm whack. Like, but I was like, that makes sense. It's my first beat. So I got to get better because I don't want to get cheesecake for Diddy because I want to make my mom proud because I want to be nice for myself, Right. So it's like, I have a different mindset. I know a lot of people don't, and their first impulse is to be defensive and, we all have that in us, when we're criticized, but
and keep in mind too, I just want to say this because I don't want anybody to think I'm dissing mental health. I don't know anything about Logic. So I don't know. I just want people to understand. I'm not saying, anybody with mental health. I work in the hood. I spend every day of my life trying to convince black folk in the hood to get mental health. So I don't want nobody thinking I'm like, oh, if you got mental health issues or depression or whatever, you're weak. What I'm saying is that we've got to get that fixed first before we can move forward. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So yep. I'm not saying it like trying to be disrespectful to, you know, to not Logic, because maybe he does have mental health issues. I don't know anything about the boy. I just saw a tweet with him saying Joe Budden makes niggas want to commit suicide. And I was like, I don't even know what the fuck is going on. But what I'm saying is it's the same thing. If you have any type of mental, whether it's mental health or whether it's regular health, you've got to get that straight first before you do anything else. So, you know, I have a disease called fibromyalgia. I had to try to get that under control before I could do anything else. So I'm not trying to shit on people and say, oh, you know, what I'm saying is if you have mental health issues and you have depression, you may want to get a hold on that. Not saying you can solve it, but get a hold on it, because there's no cure for fibromyalgia. I've just gotten it. I've kind of got a hold on it. But I had to get a hold on that first before I could do any. Yeah, I had to manage that before I could do anything else. If I can't manage my own health, how am I going to go out here and help my teens in the hood? How am I going to go out here and do those things?
The spirit of MCing and hip hop is like iron sharpens iron. There's battles, you know?
Right.
But if I lost a rap battle, I wouldn't cry because it is what it is. I lost. You got to get
But you know what, bro? Here's the great part. Here's the thing. You can't cry. Shit, I may cry. If I lose a beat battle, I'm 46. I may cry. And that's okay. Like, that is 100% okay. I'm just saying that.
It shows that you care.
Yeah, it shows that you care. So, you should cry. One of my kids came in one day and was like, Mr. Kill, guess what? I'm like, what? He was like, I just came from my grandfather's funeral. I'm like, oh, man, I'm sorry for your loss. He's like, but guess what? I said, what? He was like, I didn't cry. And I was like, but why? He was like, because my dad taught me, you don't cry. And I said, well, no disrespect to your father, but nigga, your granddad died. Cry. Like, cry. It's like he came in like it was a badge of honor. Like, yo, guess what I did? Like, I was waiting to hear he got into college or he brought a car, he got a job. You're walking in with a badge of honor to that. I did not cry for my grandfather's funeral. And I'm like, nah, go home and cry. It's okay to cry. So it's cool. Cry, get that emotion out. But if losing that battle makes you have suicidal thoughts, there's a deeper problem going on. So that's all I'm saying. I don't want no listeners to be like Kills and sensitive. Trust me, I've been working the hood for 20 years. I'm very sensitive.
You guys could be mad at me because if you lose a rap battle or a beat battle or someone tells you your shit is whack and you got to cry about it, if you're over the age of 18, I'm going to have to look at you a little.
I mean, it's all good. Now, keep in mind, I didn't say cry in public. I didn't say, start crying on stage and have a Cochise just died moment. But the problem is you may cry. All I'm trying to say is that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be upset about it.
It's all right to cry.
But if that happens, if you want to commit suicide after that, there's a deeper problem. That's all I'm saying. So let's work on the deeper problem of why you failing at something makes you. I have kids. I failed the 12th grade. I'm gonna kill myself. Like, okay, not failed the 12th grade, but like failed the class. And I'm like, nigga, you know how many classes I failed growing up? And suicide never popped in my mind. Like, that's the last. I would kill myself because I failed Algebra 1? What the fuck? I'll bring that shit up by the end of the year. Like, so that's all I'm saying is just my Kills mental health moment for PSA for the day is if you want to commit suicide because somebody calls you wag or because you didn't win an MC contest or because you failed Algebra 2, there's a deeper issue going on side. And let's work on getting you the help for that issue before we work on sharpening your pen game. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah,
that's my little PSA.
Here's the thing, because oftentimes with depression, that's, that affects your sense of self-worth and how you view yourself. And, for a person who doesn't suffer with that, being called whack, it might sting in the moment, but you can shrug it off, eventually.
Right.
And then a person with depression, they have to, it would help to work through those issues and have value in yourself so that when you're told you're whack, you don't take it as a personal attack.
Right.
And you don't allow that to send you spiraling.
And I mean, listen, Mel, it's not your whack. It's your beat is whack. Your song is whack. You are not whack. Every person's
you're a person who made a whack thing.
Yeah,
you can make a not all the time.
Thing. Every dog has their day, and I think every MC is capable of making a 10 out of 10 classic song. Every single one. They just, it's not every dog's gonna have their day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people gotta remember Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team. I mean, it's Michael fucking Jordan. So again, like I can give you so many examples of the greats, how they weren't always praised, how they didn't always make the team. They didn't always make the varsity team. Nobody wanted to. Here's the worst part. Think about this. Nobody at Roc-A-Fella wanted to sign Kanye, and he worked for them. Do you know how bad that is to have the people who you work for and you sitting there rapping your heart out and they yawning like, nigga, go make a beat? Like, you are rapping your soul out for your friends. And they're like on their 2 ways, talking to their girl on the phone, not paying you any attention. What did Jay do? He paid for that Through the Wire video out of pocket. Again, same thing Jay did. I'm going to pay for this, sold that beat, I'm going to shoot my own video. And now look, I mean, not now look at Kanye, but Kanye is or was one of the biggest hip hop stars in the world. Again, you know,
it would have been a great investment for anyone, for any label.
Right. So yeah, but I'm sorry, I done took everything off of Jay-Z.
Oh no, it's
I'm
cool.
sorry.
We love it. That's why we love bringing the guests on, because of course we always talk about the record at hand, but we get off on different tangents, and I always enjoy it. I really do.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this has been, you know, a story about not only the evils, but mental health and, you know, the different expectations from genre or from era to era in the genre, is from as far as like what you're expected to do as a rapper and break through and pay your dues, to how hard it was to put things out, you know, in comparison to now. It's like, it's funny as I'm young, and yet I think I was right on the cusp of like the changing of the eras, to where when I started in 2007, I had that drive and that initiative. You know, this is early YouTube. Like, you know, I'm like, if I want to rap, I remember going out, buying a 5-star notebook, a bunch of mechanical pencils. I went and bought like a $20 mic from Best Buy. I, you know, downloaded some crack software. I was recording 2 tracks, like but it was Lil Wayne, vocals.
Bro. Lil Wayne was calling himself
that
the
was
best
my
rapper
that was
alive.
my
When was the last? Here's the thing. Lil Wayne was calling himself the best rapper alive. When was the last time a mainstream rapper called themselves the best rapper alive?
Right, because that's not their priority anymore. You know, that's how times have changed. Like, that was my standard. That was my blueprint. It's like I was in there. I had that mindset. This is competitive. I want to be the best. I don't want to just make good records. I want to be the best MC. And that's how I went about things. You know, it's like, so being called whack wasn't going to stop me. I knew I was just starting. Like, my first records, I just like my vocals were just coming out of like just the left ear. I didn't know anything about mixing, but I'm going to YouTube every day after school, neglecting homework completely, just watching interviews, listening to songs, learning how to make beats, because that's just, I knew that's what it took. That's what I cared about. And I wasn't deterred by being whack.
But see, what you're saying is what so many other younger folk don't do. And I salute you for doing, and that's doing the homework. You see what I'm saying? So, because that's just like me. When I learned about hip hop in '84, I neglected school too. I'm in class doing graffiti all day. I'm not studying whatever my teacher's teaching. I'm doing graffiti, and I'm going home with my 2 turntables and a mixer, trying to learn how to scratch like Jazzy Jeff and Cash Money. So it's dope to hear. I mean, it's bad that we're neglecting schoolwork, but it's dope to hear that somebody in your generation is doing the same thing, and that the culture touched them the same way that it touched me 30 years ago. You see what I'm saying? Right. Because you're doing the work. My beef with a lot of newer people is they don't do the work. They don't care about the history. They don't care about, you know, going on YouTube and learning the best way. They're just going to record it once and put it out and call it a day. But a lot of that has to go back into the investment factor. Like I tell people, in 1993, I won the SP1200. That's $2,500. Now, I'm in college. I don't have no car. I'm just trying to buy enough low and hill figure to be fly on campus. I don't have $2,500 to buy an SP1200. And then I've got to buy a receiver to run it through. Then I need to buy speakers. So to make beats in 1993, you may have needed $5,000. You see what I'm saying? Right. So at Morgan in 94, 95, you only had about 7, 8 producers on the whole entire campus. I'm sure if you go to Morgan State right now, it's probably 100 producers, because now all you need is GarageBand, and you get that on your iPad, you know?
Not even, Mel. What was that thing you just showed me last week? Rap Genius is getting into beat making now?
Yeah, like they have some proprietary beat making thing they're developing.
Like, yeah, so I mean, so you're able to do it. So what you're able to do, the machine that I use right now costs $500. So you could buy a machine, try to make beats. I don't like it. Fuck it. Let me throw it away. Trust me, bro. If you spend $5,000 to learn how to make beats, goddamn it, you're going to learn how to make beats.
Right.
Okay. So again, it's that investment factor. When you invested that, I don't care how many people called you whack. If you just spend $5,000 and you can't get your money back, you're going to learn how to make good beats.
Yeah.
You're going to learn. But because it's just so easy to do now, cool. I brought an iPhone. Oh shit, what's GarageBand? Oh shit, I can make beats right here. Cool. Let me now I'm a producer. Now that's in your Twitter profile, producer. You know what I mean? So again, there's no map on how to do this. And again, same thing like Shadi, my man taught me. Like I would have to go to him, my man Bezo and Roots. Like, yo, what do y'all think of these beats? I went to them before I even went out on campus and tried to give a beat to an MC. And until they gave me the okay, it was like, back to the lab. Let me try again. And then when they started saying like, yeah, your shit is good. I hear you getting better. Then it was like, okay, let me try to go find some MCs to go fuck with or something like that. Whereas now it's like you make a beat for the first time on GarageBand, your man rhyme. Now we got a song. You know, now you a group. You know, and it don't work like that. I'm sure Pete Rock and CL Smooth's first songs were not that great.
Right.
You know, I'm sure Gangstar's first demos were not that great. They were good. They were probably all right. They may have even been whack. But you stayed at it because, 2, you had to get studio time. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't an easy thing to find in 1986. Somebody with a studio?
Right.
You know, that's not... I'm 12 years old in 1986.
An engineer who knows how to mix for rap and not for rock and roll.
And it's crazy you brought that up. That's why so many early hip hop albums from 86 and 87 are mixed horribly because nobody knew what they were doing.
Just got a bunch of rock engineers. You know, I grew up on Long Island down the block from Sabella Studios where It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back was recorded. It was mixed there. And I'll tell you something, this guy is a rock and roll engineer. He's the Public Enemy is like one of the only rap credits to his name. And, you know, this studio is like, it's a rock studio. So, you know, you got to think back in the 80s, who was a rap engineer? Now you have guys that are specifically rap engineers.
Right.
You know, you think about someone like Young Guru, and he immediately comes to mind for me. It's like, okay, this is a guy who's engineering for rappers. I don't think, when I think Rick Rubin even, it's a mix. I'm thinking a mix of rock and rap.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the engineers who were the rock engineers who gave rap enough credence to say, let me learn this.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Because again, I tell people, I'm 46. I grew up where there was no rap, okay? Which sounds amazing, but there was no rap. You know what I mean? And I was there when rap was just a fad. This won't be around 2 years from now. And people weren't saying that shit just to be cruel. They were saying it because they really believed it.
Right.
This shit ain't gonna be around. Y'all rhyming over other people's songs. Wait a second. You taking a song that's already made and you trying to remake it and that's gonna be a genre? Get the fuck out of here. I would have said the same thing too. How you just gonna take James Brown and rap over it, put some words that rhyme over it, and you gonna call this a genre? And now look at hip hop. You know what I mean? So I get why people didn't think it was gonna be around, but like you said, those rock engineers who were willing to say, let me learn this. You know what I'm saying? Versus the engineers that are here now who have learned how to mix hip hop. And then don't get me to mixing, because we talking about mixing for the iTunes store versus for how we used to mix. Because I tell people, I make beats for MPVs and the Suzu Amigos. A lot of these producers make beats for people who are going to be listening in their AirPods. There's 2 different ways of making beats, and it's 2 different ways of mixing.
Mm-hmm.
You have things that say mixed for iTunes.
Yep.
Because they're learning to mix, because people listen to the majority of their music in headphones. I grew up in an era where you listen to music through big ass speakers.
Word.
Premier would say, we leave D&D, get in the MPV, go out to Brooklyn, open up the trunk, and play that shit on the corner for people. And that's how we got our feedback, was the song good or not. Now we live in an era where you leave the studio, where you go? You go to the strip club to try your music out. Mm-hmm. 2 totally different worlds, bruh. 2 totally different worlds, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a great discussion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love when Kill blesses us with a knowledge that really only he can bring. Kill, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. But before you go, you
Yes,
got
sir.
anything to plug? New projects you're working on?
Oh, God.
Anything you want to, shout out? The floor is yours.
Apartment 5B podcast. Every Monday, new eps are up. Everything is at willmakebeatsforfood.com. Everything. If you want, I got free mixtapes. Every Friday, I drop a new mixtape. New episodes of Apartment 5B up every Monday. You can follow me on Twitter at Kill, KILAPT 5B. Instagram is Kill889. Just started a new podcast with my man Yao G's called Off the Top, where we talk about sneakers, hip hop, and basketball. And the concept is we ask one question to each other in each one of those categories, and the other person doesn't know what they're going to ask, hence the title Off the Top. So there's nothing to prepare for. So if you like hip hop, you like basketball, and we're talking all basketball. We're talking playground basketball, to college basketball, to NBA. We're talking all kinds of sneakers, a little bit of hip hop, but those are the two big things and that we're talking about. And that's really it. I always got something going on. So like I said, willmakebeatsforfood.com is just the hub for podcasts, mixes, albums I've done, everything. So yeah,
And guys, please do check out Apartment 5B. If you like this show, I can almost guarantee that you're going to like Apartment 5B. Great roundtable discussions on hip hop on there. It's one of the few hip hop podcasts, other than this one, obviously, that I endorse. So
thank you, brother. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you, man. So again, anytime y'all got an open seat for me, please send an invite, man. I love chopping it up with y'all.
Don't hesitate. All right,
Kill. Take care, man. And we'll be talking to you soon. Peace.
Yo, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all the other episodes, stop by raprankings.com or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform.